Hi guys, welcome back to Bohs Fan TV. Today we're back with another video doing a general news roundup video. Now that the off season is in full swing now, there's players leaving, players that have left, I should say, signings as well. There's been a couple of rumours, over the last couple of weeks. So we'll be discussing all that in this video here. But before we start, obviously, our fate for next season in terms of Europe, we will be a part of it. After Shamrock Rovers beat Cork City in the cup final there last week, and yeah, that was great. We were hoping and expecting Rovers to do the job there, which they did, and yeah, we'll be in Europe next year, and that's great. What we set out to do at the start of the season, we managed to achieve it. Not in the most comfortable way, but look, it's still over the line now, and we can look forward to that next year. But onto the video now. We'll start with some players that have left the club over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Starting with Archie Meekison. He's departed the club and he signed for Sligo Rovers. And yeah, look, I mean, it's not it's not a surprise maybe. Just given the fact that his game time was obviously limited. Over his kind of short spell with the club. He only signed about a year and a half ago. And the limited game time, I think, mainly came from the fact that he had a few injuries, and it was hard for him to break into the side, just given the fact that we had a lot of midfielders that were ahead of him in the pecking order. He played out on the wing a few times as well. Yeah, look, it's I mean, I rated him. I mean, I think most fans did as well. I thought, whenever he was called upon, whenever he started, I always thought he put in a good performance. Came up with some good goals as well. The goal in Cork, which he took brilliantly. Got the winning goal against Waterford there back in September. That was a very big win at the time. So, he has popped up with some good moments for us. But I think it's just down to the fact that he wasn't going to be guaranteed game time. He's a good player. He should be starting week in, week out for a club. So I think that's why he's made the switch to Sligo Rovers, and we wish him all the best. And yeah, I'm sure he'll do quite well there. And on to the next player now, which is John Mountney. He's departed after a season with the club. And look, again, a bit like Meekison, it's probably just down to the fact that he wasn't going to be guaranteed game time. Was quite in and out at times. There'd be games where he'd start, games where he'd be on the bench. And look, I don't think he let us down too many times. There were a few games where maybe he was a little bit shaky. I think he started at left back on the first game of the season against Shamrock Rovers, where he did look a bit shaky. Look, we know he's not a left back, he's not a left footer, so he was always going to look a bit awkward in that position. But I'm sure he was a good leader in the dressing room. He's a very experienced player. He's won trophies with clubs, across the country. So look, I mean, I'm sure he brought some good leadership to the camp, but it's probably just down to the fact that he wasn't going to be guaranteed game time, and that's why he's moved on. And look, we'll see where he ends up. The next player to leave then was Rob Cornwall, which was a slight surprise, maybe a bit more surprising than Meekison and Mountney. A player who had 2 spells at the club, came back under Declan Devine, and straight away got that injury that reeled him out for the rest of 2024, and came back in this season. And I thought he done well when he played. I thought, he was a really important player at times. He'd come in, and put in some great performances. Came up with an important goal against Pats. That inspired the comeback. With very few minutes to go. And I'm sure if he remained with the club, I think he'd still be able to shout at playing. Absolutely, it's probably just down to the fact that maybe it's a lifestyle thing. Maybe he wants to go back to America. I don't know. Look, I know he has an American partner. Is there something to do with that? I don't know. He popped up on the PFAI transfer list, so maybe he is looking for another club in the league. I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens there. But yeah, a little bit more surprising than the others that have left so far. But look, he's been a great servant to the club over the course of his 2 spells. Always done a great job, really solid, great leader. And yeah, he will be missed for that. And look, obviously, we wish him all the very best. Another player has left, Alex Lacey. Yeah, look, I mean, that's just a very unfortunate one. We kind of touched on it in the season review. It's just very unfortunate how things turned out for him. Only played half an hour against Sligo, and then got that bad injury that ruled him out then for the rest of the year. And yeah, it must be gutting for him to have picked up that injury and just struggled to recover from it. And yeah, it's very unfortunate. But look, let's just hope at his next club, wherever that may be, he manages to stay injury free and manages to get his career going again. So look, we wish him all the best. I suppose the next departure that was confirmed yesterday was Keith Buckley. Probably the most gutting departure of them all, really. An excellent servant to the club. Over the course it was two spells here. When he came back, it was great. He was the player that we missed at the time. We really needed him when he came back. We were lacking leaders, and he came straight in and acted as that leader straight away, like we expected him to. But then obviously getting that bad injury against Pats in 2023, missing the whole of 2024, and then only coming back this year. It was going to be hard for him, just given the fact that there were so many midfielders there that were ahead of him. Dawson, McDonald, James McManus, and they were all going to be ahead of him this year as well. So, you mentioned in the statement he's still got that fire in his belly to play football. He's still only 33, so he's still got a few years left. So he wants to be playing football, and look, you have to respect his decision there. He can still absolutely play at a good level in this country for another club in the league. And look, even though he never won a trophy with us, he's absolutely a Bohs legend, no doubt about it. Came through into the first team during tough times, just always gave us all. Even though he grew up a Shelbourne fan, you could tell how much he loved the club. And yeah, he's going to be really, really missed for his leadership and just his personality around the place. So yeah, that's probably the particularly good one. And obviously we wish him all the very best, like the rest of the players who've departed the club. But look, the departures might not end there. James Talbot, hasn't signed back yet. Look, what happens there, we don't know. It's probably a bit like Bucko, where he wants to be playing football. He's still only 28. He's heading into his prime as a goalkeeper. He wants to be playing. I'm sure, but he's probably not going to get that here. Casper's definitely ahead of him in the pecking order. Even though look, he started the season in goal and he played in the cup in goal. But I think he's been with us 6 years now. Maybe he's thinking it's time for me to move and play first team football as number one. He hasn't always had it easy with us. He started off on great highs. That first season in 2019, he was absolutely excellent. I think he was the player of the year that year. We'll always remember his save out in Richmond Park the day we got Europe, the Chris Forrester shot, which was an absolutely excellent save. And he's had some really great times with us, but look, he's also come through some difficult times as well. Having that little breakout for personal issues, and the way that he came back from that, was brilliant. And look, you can tell he loves the club and really loves being a part of Bohemians. But maybe for his personal career, it's best for him to move on to a club where he knows he's going to be the number one. So I'm sure that's in his mind at the minute. I'm sure he's mulling over a few things, whether to stay or whether to go elsewhere. He could definitely go into another club in the league. You could also see him going abroad. You never know. I think both options are on the table. But if he was to leave, we'd absolutely wish him all the best and thank him for everything he's done. Another player whose future's up in the air is James Clark. We still don't really know what's going on there. He's obviously out of contract. Heavily linked with a move away. Dundee in Scotland has popped up now over the last week or two. It does seem unlikely that he will sign back, unfortunately. It would be great if he could. Obviously we've got Europe for next year. I wonder, has that come into his thinking? The fact that he's going to be playing European football. If he does stay, I'm sure that's something that he's thinking about at the minute. But at 24 now, he's probably thinking, I've never played across the water, I've only ever been in Ireland. Maybe it's time for me to further kick on now and explore a new league. Which you could understand him thinking that. Of course, he's done really really well for us. He's been an absolutely excellent signing. Since he's come in from Drogheda, he's been absolutely brilliant. He's been asked to do some difficult roles at times. He's had to play up front a lot as well. Which I'm sure it's not ideal for him. But look, he always led the line with purpose. He always gave us all. But when he had to play up front, and look, you could understand his thinking. In terms of getting that move, across the water, which I'm sure he's been thinking about now for a little while. But look, hopefully, he decides to stay and plays in Europe with us next year. On to incomings now, and two main names have been linked so far. One of them look like they're done. It's just waiting for the announcement. Most reputable sources are saying it's done, and that's Patrick Hickey from Galway United. And yeah, I'm a fan of this signing. I think he gives us something different. Obviously, he's a very different player to someone like Clark. Who will be playing that number 10 role. I think obviously he's probably a more physical presence, of course. Just given his height and his physicality. I think he's one of those players that we probably didn't have last year, in terms of someone who, if we are chasing the game against a team who are defending in a low block, we can put Hickey in the box, and he can hopefully get on the end of things. When how many times last season were we in a position where we were chasing the game, looking for a goal against a team that were defending very deep, and we were just passing it around the outside of the box, not getting balls into the box, not risking a shot on goal. I just think if we had something like Patrick Hickey up there in the box, he could get on the end of stuff. If we decide to go a bit more direct. So yeah, I think that's what this signing's for. And look, I'm all for it. When we came up against Galway United last season, we always spoke about how dangerous they'd be from set pieces and throw-ins. And look, Patrick Hickey was the player that sprung to mind when you spoke about Galway's dangerous from those sort of things. So that one looks like it's done. We're just waiting for the announcement. So look, yeah, I'm a fan of that signing. The other one is Sam Todd from Derry City, a centre half. His contract's up there, and that one looks like it's going to be done as well. So yeah, I think it's another good signing. He played most weeks for Derry this season. I was seeing a lot of praise from Derry fans as well. A lot of Derry fans were disappointed to see these rumours, and I think that's obviously a good sign. He's at a good age as well. I think he's 27. He's experienced in the league. He's been at Derry for a little while now. He had a spell at Larne as well. Obviously with Cornwall gone, with Alex Lacey gone, we're going to need a centre half, and I think Todd would be a really good signing. I think he'd slot in perfectly. Obviously Reynolds knows him from his time at Derry. And yeah, I'd be a big fan of the signing. It's another player with good league experience like Patrick Hickey as well. So, being able to sign a player, from a team that finished above us last season, one of their main defenders, I think it's brilliant. And being able to tempt them away from Derry as well, who I'm sure we're trying to give him a new contract as well. So yeah, I think Patrick Hickey looks like it's done. Todd getting there as well. So yeah, that's where I'll end it. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment down below your thoughts on all the latest news, all the players that have left so far, the rumour, the incomings as well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.